Yeah? What? Yeah. It wouldn't be a problem. It's very quiet.
Powell.
Hello, everyone, and happy Global Day of Jihad. Sorry, I shouldn't be saying that with a smile on my face. There genuinely have been terrorist attacks. A French teacher was stabbed to death, and some people were wounded. And in China, of all places, where I didn't think Muslims really had much of a voice. I thought if there were Muslims there, like the Uyghurs, they got put in concentration camps, and weirdly, everyone across the Arab world did not care. Over there, I think the Israeli diplomat has been stabbed. Might be a government operation. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Actually, we'll never find out because it's China, and we never find out anything from there. But yeah, Global Day of Jihad. Just what we want. Maybe this can be like a new sort of Guy Fawkes Day. I wish I could start with something a bit lighter, but that's the world we're in. I hope the sound is okay. I've managed to set up everything. I think it's all working. I'm just going to check the stream. Yeah, it looks like it's working. It's working. No way. I can't believe it. The tech is just such a pain in the hole. But here we are. Nick in the comments was mentioning some confusion over Australian time and British time, because of course in Britain we do this weird thing. We have daylight saving time and then like winter time or whatever it's called. And Australia, I think you got different time zones because it's such a big country from like West Australia. I know when I was living in Perth, it was actually quicker to get to Bali. It was closer. Bali was closer than Adelaide, I think. And I remember I flew from Perth or Adelaide to Tasmania, which doesn't even look that far. And it was like 2 flights. It was like getting to, Turkey or something. It was mad. But yeah, when Brits first arrived in Australia, they built their houses, and because they wanted sun in their houses, they built their houses pointing south, like we do in the UK to get extra sun. Not realising that because they're in the southern hemisphere, they're actually getting less sun. Little factoid about Australia. But yeah, back to current events. I don't know, I think if there's some good news coming out of all the mayhem and murder and carnage in Israel and Palestine, is that people are waking up to the dangers of multiculturalism. I think some people have been warning for ages. Some people have been taken seriously, like Douglas Murray. Other people, because of the way they deliver it, and maybe because they deliver it with too much resentment, maybe a bit of racism, have sort of tarnished the message and turned left-wing people off it. But this seems to really be waking people up to the dangers of multiculturalism, and it's not a racist thing. I was thinking about this. It's not even a cultural thing. Obviously, it's not all cultures that are dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, I've never heard anybody be like, "Oh no, there's Japanese people moving in next door with their politeness and their orderly approach to life." And even I've worked with people from the Middle East. I've worked with plenty of Iraqis, Syrians, and Iranians. who are highly educated and obviously civilized people. I mean, there's a thing. Iran, like so many people are educated. Iraq also used to have a big middle class. I don't know if it does anymore. Syria as well. And yeah, they're obviously civilized people, but there's almost subcultures within Islam and within certain countries that just aren't compatible with Western liberal democracy, as some people are finding out today on the Global Day of Jihad, as their head gets separated from their shoulders. But let's start off with something a bit more cheerful than Global Jihad. Here's a video of Owen Jones getting owned at the Tory conference. I'm just going to check the comments for a second just to see if anybody is saying, no, it looks like everything's working. It looks like everything's working. Sound is okay. Audio and video are great. And this is just on the webcam. I'm gonna gradually expand this so it like gets sharper and better. I'm gonna use my proper camera. I don't know what else I can do. Hire an actor to say the words. But yeah, here's a video of Owen Jones. This is at the Tory Party conference. So this is about a week old, but it's relevant to what's happening today. And it's interesting how Owen tries to catch out this kid who must only be like 21 years old. Tries to catch him out, and the kid just ties him up in knots and almost radicalizes him.
What do you think, Enoch Powell?
Enoch Powell's obviously a very divisive figure.
Yeah. What do you think of him, though?
Personally, what I think of him is a lot of stuff he was saying, although very divisive at the time, has come to pass. Some cities are no longer diverse. They are no longer diverse in the sense that there isn't a mix of cultures, where it's now been completely replaced by one culture over another.
Like where?
A lot of boroughs of London where the white working classes have been moved out in exchange for a lot of people from
What do you mean they've been moved out?
Well, a lot of the council estates in central London now, in some of those boroughs, have been completely demographically changed to a completely alien culture to what it would have been 50 years ago.
But what do you mean an alien culture? I mean, in East End London, it used to be very Jewish, and now
Yes.
it's more Muslim, but that's always been the case.
So,
I mean, that's...
So that's a very alien culture to what it was then, isn't it?
No, I mean, they're British Muslims.
Yes, but it's an alien culture.
What do you mean
It's a different culture.
Alien culture means
Alien as in unfamiliar.
Yeah, but it's not alien to being British. Being British means you could be Muslim or Jewish or Hindu.
I'm not saying it's to being British. I'm saying it's to the culture of the area, to the beliefs and belief structures of the area, to the institutions that once were there, being replaced by new institutions now, and new beliefs and new ideologies and new cultures and new religions.
Well, they're different
completely
religions,
changing
of course.
it.
But yeah, I mean...
But a religion is an entire cultural and ideological outlook on the world.
There's still white working class people who live there who go to school with people from different backgrounds, and they mix with people from different backgrounds. They're not monocultures. You still have white working class people in Tower Hamlets.
I'm talking about whether or not the native people in those areas feel that they are now in their homeland, or if their homeland confronts them as something other, something which distracts them from what they believe themselves to be.
Well, I think millions of people are actually happy with being diverse. I mean, London has huge numbers of mixed relationships where people from different cultures quite literally set families up together. I mean, that's a good thing, surely.
I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's neither here nor there.
Well,
Diversity is not inherently good, it's not inherently bad, that's not my point.
Well, I think it's inherently good, but...
Why do you think that?
Because I think you get an interesting exchange of cultures and worldviews, and that makes for a more interesting and dynamic
But why
society.
does a mix of cultures and worldviews provide something good, necessarily?
Because we learn from each other.
Yes, but why? Well, let's say there's some archetypal brilliant worldview, the best possible worldview, right? Would you then say, oh, let's make it more diverse and mix it with other worldviews? No.
What do you think?
Yeah, so that's Owen Jones. He tries to catch out that kid, and he obviously thinks, I can get him. I'm going to ask him about Enoch Powell. Obviously, an incredibly divisive figure, although, as the kid says, actually said some things that have awkwardly for the left come to pass. And this kid's like, what, 21? He's got like love bites on his neck. This is, you wouldn't think you'd think it'd be Christopher Hitchens or, somebody like that that's going to be tying Owen Jones up in knots. But yeah, this just shows how leftist ideology can crumble under scrutiny. Owen Jones saying diversity is strength. The kid's got a great counterpoint that, like, what if you had the best possible culture, the archetypal culture that was brilliant? How would that be improved by diversity? And I think that's what we're seeing to a certain extent with Western liberal democracy. Although people in the West like to talk it down, like to say, oh, it's terrible, it's patriarchal, systemic oppression, colonization, all those phrases, it's actually pretty good. And if you introduce Some other cultures where they practice, I don't know, female genital mutilation. You're not improving the culture. It's not. There's not a bonus being brought there. Yeah, there might be some spicy food, but that's we've already got the recipes, so we don't need to bring that. And also this point that Owen Jones says about London has always been diverse. I've heard this, I've argued on TV with somebody about this who said, London's always been diverse, as if it's always been this diverse. Like London at the moment, for the first time ever, white British people are in a minority. Now, I mean, if you include the white people from, Eastern Europe and places like that, then white people aren't in a minority. But white British, the sort of indigenous population, if we were allowed to say that, which we're not because white people aren't allowed to be indigenous for some reason, the white British people are in a minority. So although, like 100 years ago, there were immigrants to London, it was the sort of first port of call for a lot of people coming into the country. The numbers were really low compared to what we've got now. And I mean, if you go back to medieval times, everybody talks about the Norman conquest, the Saxons coming over, the Vikings or whatever. I mean, there's two things. I mean, for a start, there was way more parking spaces back then. No, for a start, the numbers were still much smaller than we're getting now coming across the channel. And also they were kind of culturally more similar. They were, generally Christian. So it wasn't like when French people came over, it drastically changed our culture. So I think it's a bit of a red herring for people to say that. And I don't know, I just feel like London, like being somebody who lives in London, it's not at a breaking point or anything, but there's certainly some negative effects. Like where I used to live in West London, it's a nice enough area, and cost like everywhere in London cost quite a bit to stay there. And they opened a social housing house next door and started putting like refugees and stuff in it, and not just refugees, they had like all kinds of social housing people. And so there was rubbish getting chucked on the street, and just stuff getting chucked in the garden. And there's parties. And man, I mind like hanging out the window when they're having a party, just watching all the people arrive. And there's a guy walking down, he's trying all the car handles. And man, that's not improving the area. And it was so galling as a taxpayer to be having to pay all this money to rent a flat in that area and then pay all this tax so that other people get a flat for free and then just shit on the area. I don't know, man. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me getting old. I don't know. Moving on, and less divisive. Here's a Just Stop Oil woman. You might have seen this already. This cracked me up. This woman cracked me up.
How worse does it have to get? How many kids have to die? How many more young people have to do this stuff? I don't know what else to say, Anna. Why aren't you on the streets with us? That's all I can say. How do you explain your inaction? How do you explain it? Everyone here, all the presenters that we talk to, how do you explain your inaction? How much longer are you going to keep this journalistic objectivity up? Until the water's lapping at your ankles? Until your own kids haven't got food? How long?
And for Just Stop Oil, what's next? Will you continue to disrupt events, or what's the plan?
Because it's morally wrong to not take the action that we know from history has got some chance of having an effect. People feel powerless. We are the opposite. When we come together, we have enormous power. There are so many more of us than there are of them. How worse?
So that's a Just Stop Oil woman who's again, like people. I've just looked at the comments. People are slating Owen Jones for being too old to have his student opinions, which is totally true, and it's nuts that the actual student had better thought out opinions than a man who's like one of the top commentators for The Guardian, has obviously had plenty of time to think through his opinions, should have the most perfect opinions in the world. But that woman, man, she's old. She's got to be like, what, in her 60s or something? So for her to be carrying on like a child is just nuts. just getting to some of the other comments. I commute through South London. I don't see that many white school kids. Don't know why you're looking for kids. No, obviously I'm joking there. Try Manningham in Bradford. Yeah, there's a lot of places. Funnily enough, I was on Lotus Eaters yesterday, and we went through. We're looking at different towns, and we're looking at different cities in the UK. And there's a lot of pretty big like neighbourhoods in the UK that are just completely or almost completely non-white. So they've lost all their sort of indigenous population. It's nuts. She looks like an elderly Lego man. She does. And she seems like a scientist. What even is a scientist these days? And yeah, people scaring kids to death. That's totally true. Why are people... there's so much, especially since lockdown, because kids couldn't get out and play with their friends, so they were just stuck inside on their phones and on screens. So then any concerns get duplicated. You know what it's like when you're on Google, or you go down a Wikipedia hole. You can find all the information you need to absolutely terrify yourself to death. So then for older people to be coming out and acting like this, acting hysterically, like a death cult, she's so convinced that we're all gonna die, and it's ridiculous. Like, all right, climate change might be happening, but there's good things and there's bad things. Like, vast tracts of tundra are going to become inhabitable, so that's actually a whole lot of land that's going to be farmable and people can live on it. The exploitation of fossil fuels has been good for humanity, and the long-term trend is for carbon dioxide being taken out of the atmosphere by mostly by the sea, by shellfish. So if you look at the White Cliffs of Dover, that's all seashells. That's calcium carbonate. So that's a lot of carbon that's been drawn out of the atmosphere to make the seashell, and then stays in the ground as a seashell, as white cliffs, as chalk, as limestone. So although we've got this blip over the last 100 years, 200 years or whatever, where we're getting the coal and everything out, getting the hydrocarbons out the ground and burning them and putting the carbon back into the atmosphere, long term the trend is actually for carbon being removed from the atmosphere. And once it gets to a certain low point, it's very dangerous for us. I think at some point in prehistory, I can't remember the time, but the levels of carbon in the atmosphere reached like 150 parts per million, whereas right now it's around about 400 parts per million. And below, I think it's about 120, 130 parts per million, like life on Earth just stops. There isn't enough carbon dioxide for trees to photosynthesize. And fungus actually saved us, and it started breaking down the trees and releasing carbon back into the atmosphere. But yeah, long term, I can see, obviously not in the next 100 years or whatever, but once we've decarbonized all our industry and all our power generation, we're going to have to be, all those places where we've sequestered carbon, we've drawn it out and pumped it into undersea tanks or whatever, we're going to be pumping it back out into the atmosphere because we're going to need more carbon, and we're constantly going to be playing this battle of keeping carbon in the atmosphere at the right level. That's just that's just what I think. I'm a circuit comedian. I'm not a scientist who looks like a Lego man. But yeah, this woman crying on the news, I just can't believe that people would go on the news and cry and think that's going to win over people to my argument. Imagine if that's how Brexiteers had argued their case, if some pro-Brexit politician in a suit and tie had gone on Newsnight and been like, oh, we need Brexit because I just want it because what about my children? Man, everybody would have laughed that guy out of town. So I don't know why this person gets a pass. And also, she says, I'm assuming she, I haven't read the pronouns, but she says that she's going to continue with the bad behaviour, doing protests, stopping traffic and stuff. So she's admitting she's going to continue criminal activity, dangerous criminal activity. How come she's not been arrested? Lawrence Fox said he was going to, he supported Blade Runners cutting down the ULEZ cameras, and, he had Sadiq's goons booting down his door the next day. I don't know why it hasn't happened to her. Let's look at some more of the comments. Jumbo Whiffy says thumbs up. I don't know why. I don't know why. It's funny. Where is it? 5 going on 150, says Nick. Woodulus says she has the crazy look of a dog about to bite you. Yeah. Frothing at the mouth. I agree with that. Man, like, I worry about these Bully XLs. I've actually got this. I bought a metal pen. So when I'm out with my daughter, you know, just on the off chance some Bully XL tries to eat us, I can kill it with this metal pen. I don't know if that would actually work. I've never... It didn't come with... It's not like it's a special Bully XL killing pen. It's I just figure it's something. I can... Instead of sticking my thumb up its arse, I can shove this metal pen up the Bully XL's arse. Nick Merrilies says, I get scared by what I find in my freezer. I should imagine that's decapitated parts of sex workers. Benny Outlaw says, it's Chris Packham in disguise. The average person, Nick says, the average person isn't allowed to mention parts per million. Joke in process. Not entirely sure what that means, but I've noticed the new term, you know, like during COVID, they came up with some terms like the R count or whatever it was, the R rate. The new term for climate change that people use on Twitter when they try to look smart talking about climate change is wet bulb temperatures. It does my nutting. Wet bulb temperatures. Every time I see that phrase, I just want to shove a wet bulb up their urethra. John Silt says, hats off to the presenter for keeping a straight face. Yeah, I don't know how to do it. Jumbo Woofy says, go for the eyes. I don't know what's that's clearly he's getting into the spirit of Global Jihad Day. Moving on, what have we got? Oh yes, I wanted to talk about this. There was a non-binary tech conference, right, in America, and this was an expensive thing. This was $1,300 a ticket. It wasn't non-binary. It was women and non-binary. It was the largest gathering of women and non-binary technologists in the world. And it was recently dominated by men, according to Newsweek, causing uproar among attendees and leading to apologies from organisers. So I'll just see what they're saying here.
Career conference for females in tech was taken over by male attendees.
They were there just purely for the career fair.
Social media clips filmed at the Grace Hopper, the world's largest gathering of women technologists, show men standing in line to meet with recruiters.
This is a space for women in tech. This is one of those few limited resources that isn't for you, it's for us.
Some of the male attendees reportedly lied about being non-binary just to get in.
But it's interesting that the large majority of the people that actually ended up in the event had name tags with he, him, and have no searchable history of identifying as non-binary.
Several tech workers defended the men for trying to capitalize on job opportunities not meant for them, saying that the entire concept was wrong.
Let's be honest, there is no need for a conference just for women, because if it was the opposite for men, it would be sexist. Just because you are a woman doesn't give you the right to talk to a big firm recruiter. Guys work just as hard and they don't get that chance.
Now that's interesting because so they've got this women in tech conference, and obviously they opened it up to non-binary people because what they really mean by women is just anything except straight white guys. So and it's $1,300 a ticket, and you can go down. You can give your CV out to people in tech, and people complained that men were lying and saying pretending to be non-binary to get into the event and then hand out their CVs. But that's when somebody identifies as non-binary, they are just pretending they're non-binary because that's what identifying is. It's they're exactly playing by the rules, and it's actually really offensive for these people to say, oh, they're not real non-binary people because they don't have any searchable history of identifying as non-binary, and they didn't have pronouns in their CV that said non-binary. They just went by he/him. It's like they could be gender fluid. Some people are gender fluid, and their gender changes from moment to moment. Like right now, I identify as a man. When I'm applying for an Arts Council grant, I'm going to identify as a one-legged Lebanese woman. So, the way people identify can change, and that's valid according to the rules that these people created. How can they? This is what I've noticed. for some reason in comedy, like, so they advertise comedy gigs sometimes and they say, oh, we're looking for a woman or a non-binary person. I always put myself forward. Darius always puts himself forward. And we never get it. And then if we ask, they're like, we know that you're taking the piss. It's like, how, like, so basically, it's just, being non-binary is just something that's open to sort of skinny dweebs. Like, you know, like, the sort of, it's just nerds have found a way of excluding, like, regular guys. And it's bullying. I feel bullying. I feel bullied. I feel othered. I think it's disgusting. And I don't know. I just feel like this is the way. Just assuming that some of these non-binary people at this conference were in fact men, cisgender men, who are just exploiting the rules to register as non-binary. This is maybe how this whole thing gets brought down by malicious compliance. So, you know, if you can just register as non-binary and attend that conference, maybe that's how we end all the nonsense, and then everybody gets treated the same. We live in a meritocracy. Could possibly work. Maybe it's just a dream. Lee Griffin says, why would you need pronouns on a name badge? Just use the person's name, for fuck's sake. Yep, good point. Benny Outlaw says, message retracted. Wow, what did you write, Benny? Nick says, he is a straight white male, identifies as a straight white male. Good. Woodula says, women and non-binaries build the best submarines. Too soon? Oh, that's a serious point, by the way. So all this, all this drive for equality, diversity, and inclusion, because people have been trying to crowbar in, women, non-binary, ethnic minority, or global majority, or whatever you're supposed to call them. So they exclude white men from the pool of applicants, like they're doing at this Women in Tech conference. And the thing is, what if a white man, would have been the best person for that job? Then you're excluding him from that job, and you're getting somebody else who can't do the job as well. I'm not saying, that's what always happens, but if you're excluding people from a recruitment pool, then that's, it's bound to happen eventually. So yeah, it's ridiculous. So yeah, maybe eventually we'll get to the point of not having women only, not having non-binary stuff, and just we'll have a meritocracy where everybody's judged on the content of their character, just like Martin Luther King wanted. Now, I wanted to do a bit about this. There's been a spate of attacks on social justice activists lately. I mean, I say attacks, murders. So a lot of people have who sort of celebrate and encourage Black Lives Matter and stuff like that, but it doesn't always work out for them. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. This is. Right. Is this working again? Is this working? Let's see if this is working. Is it working? Is it working? Nice. I'm just talking to the stream. Okay, we're back. We're back in business. I can't believe that happened. Of all the times for my internet to crash for a very long time, all I can say is do not trust Virgin Media. They do not know what they're doing. Like a virgin, unironically. I don't know if anybody saw that video that was playing. It's I'll play it again. It's the start of the Black Lives Matter protests, and some people in a flat were giving a thumbs up to the protest.
Why are you?
And they throw rocks at the windows.
Holy shit! We're on your side! We're on your fucking side! What the fuck?
And they shout out, "We're on your side." And that's played out again recently. So there have been 3 social justice activists, Black Lives Matter activists who've been killed by black men. So one of them, the first one was Pava Lepere, who was she was a tech guru. She was one of Forbes 30 under 30. And this guy, Jason Billingsley, was let out of prison early. He's a 6'4" guy, 305 pounds. I don't know what that is in stone because it's too complicated. They should just do it in the decimal system. I don't know what it is. But he, a week earlier, he'd done a knife point sex attack, and he killed 2 people that he knew, I believe. And then he killed Lapierre, who he didn't know. He'd been jailed for 30 years in 2015. He was set free just 5 years later, in October 2022. And he was, is that 5? No, that's 7. 7 years. So it's unclear why he was released so swiftly, but some news outlets have reported that he was freed by a DA backed by George Soros, who spends his money promoting liberal values, which, on paper sounds like a good idea, but in reality doesn't always work out as a great idea. And she'd spent a lot of time calling out racism. I've got some of her tweets here. Here we are. She says, this is her company, Ecomap Technologies. She says, it stands against systemic racism, bigotry, and a police state that criminalises black bodies. We stand in support of the Black Lives Matter movement now and always. We commit to being anti-racist in all aspects of what we do, from the team members we hire to the customers we serve. We're proud to have a team that is over 30% black, and we commit to improving diverse representation in our company. In addition to donations, we'll commit our community service hours to organisations that promote and support black entrepreneurship. So she's encouraging black representation, but also, which is good, but also the flip side of it is she'll be promoting the sort of early release of black offenders. She'll be calling for leniency when they're sentenced because of, systemic bias and oppression, all that sort of stuff. And then that leads to, this guy getting out of jail sooner. And there he is. He's this massive guy, 6 foot 2, 6'4", whatever it was. And I think any person, he killed her because he sort of tailgated into her apartments and then said, I forgot my key and all this sort of stuff. And so she went back and opened the door and let him in. And it's like, man, anybody would have had, I'm 6'6". I'd be like, whoa, wait a minute. Who's this guy? Regardless of, color or anything like that. It's just some big lump of a guy. It's nighttime. I'd be like, alarm bells going off. I'd maybe just back away from the door. But her ideology made her override any sort of natural instinct of fear or anything like that. These are some other things that she's said. She's calling out other people in the tech industry. She says, I'm sorry, but if your investment thesis says anything about a dedication to investing in underrepresented founders and your portfolio page is 95% white men, kindly reevaluate yourself. She's, constantly, I guess it's the fashion for young white women to bang on about this, but every article about a black, brown, female, low income or otherwise underrepresented founder succeeding despite all of the obstacles put in their way should not be cause for celebration of how far we've come, but a reminder of how far we need to go. Obviously think she's speaking at the Democrat Congress, but yeah, there's loads and loads of examples of her tweeting this stuff. And obviously it's tragic that she died, tragic that she was killed, but it really just shows the power of ideology. She should have been more worried about this guy coming into her block of flats. The next one who got killed is Ryan Carson. You might have heard of this. So he'd just been at a wedding with his girlfriend. They were, in fact, I've got a video somewhere. Might be on this page. It's a pretty horrific video. I'll play it. Oh, what? Is it not going to play? Is it one of those things where you click on it and it doesn't actually play it? What on earth is this? This does my nutting. Just play the video. Why have you got a video play thing and then it doesn't play a video? What's this? It just opened up. I've got another video play thing. What? This is, man. See, stuff like this. Don't have a video play button if it's just a picture. That just does my nutting. but yeah, it's a pretty horrific video. Basically, he's waiting at the bus stop. This guy walks along. I think he's messing around with cars or something, and this guy here jumps up and tries to have a word with him, like Michelle Pfeiffer in Dangerous Minds or Suspicious Minds or whatever it's called. And then the guy turns round, chases him. Unfortunately, I don't know if you can see in this still from the video here, man, the guy like just runs straight into the bench that he'd just been sitting on and face plants into the bench, and then the guy stabs him. It's sad. I mean, I think the bench did most of the damage, to be honest. But his girlfriend refused to identify the suspect to the police. And here is the video. Is it? Warning, graphic content. This must be the video. So here we go. So yeah, he's waiting at the bus stop with his girlfriend. The guy walks past. And then for some reason they wander about. I don't know why, because they're waiting for a bus. They go up. You can see, the guy's kicking a car or kicking something. So obviously Ryan's like, hey man, do you want to play some hacky sack? Do you want to jive it out? And the guy comes back. What have I done? The guy comes back and Ryan's like, hey, I'm on your side. And then, yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's tragic and it's horrible. But oh god, yeah, you almost saw him face planting into the thing there. But obviously a horrible, brutal, like unnecessary attack. He's a good guy. He's just trying to help. But man, I just think there's the video. How come the video is on every tab now? Now I can't get away from this video after trying to open the video. But what I found shocking about it, apart from the murder itself, which is just, it's so nasty, and I don't know if the Black Lives Matter movement and all the social justice warriors have sort of created an environment where people feel like they're more likely to get away with that or less likely to be apprehended and get serious sentences. But his girlfriend Claudia Morales is a cop-hating BLM activist. She was at a BLM riot in Boston in 2020. Here she is with her number plate, which says K Marks. Well, I don't know if it's her number plate. She doesn't seem like the sort of person who could afford a car, to be honest. But, she obviously celebrates Marxism. Here she is. She's posting about being in a Black Lives Matter rally, and a cop tried to run her over. According to her, she says ACAB, which stands for All Cops Are Bastards. There she is with the T-shirt, the ACAB T-shirt. There it is again. And then when the cops came to solve the tragedy of her boyfriend's murder, she refused to help the police out with their investigation, apparently. And the friends of Ryan said that he would feel sorry for the violent teenager who stabbed him to death and think of him as the victim of a broken system. I think Ryan himself is the victim of a broken system. But what's worse about this is the natural reaction of the leftist social justice warrior is to use their friend's death to grift money and get a free vacation. So they set up a crowdfunding round carried out by GoFundMe, and they managed to raise more than 60 grand. So they said, we are a collective of Ryan's close friends reeling from a brutal loss. We're asking for your help on behalf of his partner in easing the burden and stress of this horrifying situation so that we can have space and time to grieve and remember Ryan. Immediate needs are to offset the costs of working class people taking time off work to properly mourn. Right, number one, none of them are working class. I've never seen a working class person who's posted all this stuff about Black Lives Matter. That's a sign that you've got luxury beliefs, you've got too much time to sit around overthinking stuff. And number two, man, the guy just died. Can't you just not grift some money off the back of it? It's just, it's grim. It's grim. Let's see if there's any comments. So yeah, people are saying we're back. Nick Merrily says £305 is heavier than me, and I'm classed as a FF, a fat something. There we go. Nick, this is, I shouldn't laugh at this. It is, it is horrific. But Pulp Fiction, the musical extended version, 1 minute long. That is, that is good. So yeah, they should ask Patrice Couleurs again. Black Lives Matter. Maybe I should do a video about the sort of rise and fall of Black Lives Matter, because everybody thought it was going to be a movement for social change and justice and all the rest of it. I didn't. I immediately assumed my natural evil instincts kicked in, and I was like, man, this is just people. They're just going to use all this groundswell of support to either make themselves rich or try and damage other people and get power and settle scores. But yeah, it just shows how stupid and crass woke people are. They don't just create the conditions that enable crimes like this to happen. They let them happen. And any sane woman would be apprehensive about, some of these situations. Any sane, person would be apprehensive about some of these situations. You wouldn't be approaching a man who's like kicking a car door in. But their ideology makes them push through. They've been told, they've told themselves. John Sowell has said, I saw this video and her reaction was rather hinky. He was lying, dying, and she says, I'm sorry this has happened to you. Yeah. Man, like, if that was somebody, well, I don't know. You can't judge how people react in a situation like that. It's so traumatic. But I mean, if it's knife wounds, you've got to apply pressure. Everybody knows that. But yeah, how many people have got to die before people wake up to ideology and start being realistic about life? But ideology is powerful. 150 million people died under communism, and people still believe it to this day. It's nuts. The next one is Josh Kruger, who's a social justice warrior. He posted stuff like this, saying the characterization of crime being pervasive is deeply problematic, especially with gun violence. It hides black men are bearing the vast majority of these tragedies. The erasure is harmful, lets this acute attack on an entire generation be folded into some fuzzy big picture. He's actually got a point there, because the vast majority of the gun violence crime, people say, but it's mostly done by, black men. Yeah, but most of the victims are black men as well. So he says, we ought to be asking what factors are fueling this and who or what systems are supporting the underpinnings of this targeted violence. To me, we have a white supremacist police state doing exactly what it is designed to do, and that is what that big fuzzy picture obscures. Roll on a year, he's been murdered. This one gets a bit murky though, because apparently, so he's a journalist and an activist, and he was murdered by a 19-year-old, so somebody half his age, less than half his age. He's 39, and apparently he was in a relationship with him. They shared sex and shared drugs. I mean, shared sex, you sort of have to share sex, but they shared drugs. And he'd apparently known the guy who killed him since he was 15. So yeah, it gets murkier and dicier, but yeah, it's just another Black Lives Matter activist killed by the people they stood up for. If we move on, I mean, I'm seeing, I don't know, there's some echoes of that with what's happening right now. People are writing these articles like, I've never felt so frightened being Jewish in Britain. This is Israel's 9/11, but so many of my good left-wing friends say nothing, or worse, they say that the Israelis deserve it. And I've seen this almost like an awakening of the fact that, all these people calling for decolonization, calling for social justice, even the phrase social justice, what does that mean? It's like, and how do you enact this idea of social justice? If somebody's got more than you, if they've got like a nicer car, are you allowed to smash the car up so you're both equal? I mean, this is the sort of essence of Marxism. This is, Labour Party policy writ large. People are waking up to the fact that, this is what Marxism, this is what wokeism means. But yeah, on a cheerier note, I've got more terrible responses to the Israel war, and then I'll go. This was supposed to be an hour. I can't believe my internet just blew up for like 10 minutes in the middle of it. But here we go, some terrible responses to the Israel war. So Justin Bieber posted a picture, I'm trying not to laugh, he posted a picture praying for Israel with a picture of Gaza. So a lot of people have said, Justin Bieber is just so thick. He might be thick, or it might just be top tier Zionist trolling. Justin Bieber is saying Gaza is part of Greater Israel, and that's his political stance that he's laid out. Let's just have a look at some of your comments. Cyro says, mate, your Google Ads recommendations. I wonder what my Google Ads recommendations are, by the way. Like, what do you get? Is it all survivalist stuff? Is it all like, let's go live in a cabin in the woods and grow our own food? Who else? It was a mostly peaceful murder. That is how they describe it. Nick Merrily says, it's simple, we always support Israel and Jewish people. Yeah, I mean, I think it's terribly sad. Like, it's horrific when civilians die on both sides. But yeah, overall, man, like, it's civilization versus barbarianism. Hamas are barbarians. They don't want peace. And this is the nature of war. And yeah, it's horrific. But sadly, it looks like war is the only way it's going to be resolved. So yeah, it's bad. Mia Khalifa, I know I spoke about her in the video I did, but she's been dropped from her Playboy podcasting deal now after her comments. But one of the comments, she made loads of comments. One of the comments that made me laugh, she told Hamas, she calls them freedom fighters, she told Hamas to flip their phones and film horizontally. This is... She cares more about, just if you can get the right ratio for my Instagram stories, I'd really appreciate that, guys. It's just, man, this generation, I don't know what's going on. There's also an Israeli flag getting revenge on, so somebody tried to burn an Israeli flag. You might have seen this already. It just made me laugh. It's a big flag, by the way, and obviously not made an oof, so he's covered me. Are you fucking shitting me? My internet just dropped out again, and I think it's reconnected. Sarah says language. Man, I'm ready to throw this laptop out the window. I cannot believe my internet just blows itself up right when this is the time I need it. Why doesn't it blow up when I'm not using it? Like 5 a.m. when I'm asleep. I don't know. It's annoying. I can't even remember what I was talking about now. What was I even talking about? Oh yeah, the EU. So under EU regulations, wonderful EU regulations, which are always great. We should all be thankful for them, and I can't wait until we're back in. But under EU regulations, flags had to be made of non-flammable material. So hippies hated this because they couldn't burn the American flag, but they must have got this flag from China or somewhere like that, and that flag burns. So there we go. If they were in the EU, that wouldn't have happened. The next tab is sort of Black Lives Matter have sort of come out in support of Hamas. So I put this in the video, but they're explicitly referencing the the paragliders that went in and butchered all the people at the music festival. I actually saw some of the footage of that's come out is just horrific. I was having to go and watch footage of Russians getting blown up by Ukraine just as a sort of palate cleanser because the stuff coming out of Israel was so horrible. I saw a video from the music festival where a guy who's obviously he's taking loads of MDMA because he's at a music festival, and then all this carnage has happened, and then you can see his eyes and he's gurning and stuff, and yeah, it's horrific, absolutely horrific. Here we go. Cyrus says this guy is using 2 cans and some taut string. I wish I had the technology. Instead, I've got Virgin Media, which is worse than a yogurt pot. So yeah, moving on. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter have really come out strongly in favour of Hamas. So they say Black Lives Matter grassroots stands in solidarity with our Palestinian family who are currently resisting 57 years of settler colonialism and apartheid. As black people continue the fight to end militarism and mass incarceration in our own communities, let us understand the resistance in Palestine as an attempt to tear down the gates of the world's largest open-air prison. As a radical black organisation grounded in abolitionist ideals, we see clear parallels between black and Palestinian people. That's interesting because in Israel, you've got black Hebrews, genuine black guys who are fighting in the IDF and fighting Hamas. And the Palestinians are Mediterranean. They're generally pretty white. So it's not really a black and white thing. And those words, you know, colonialism and apartheid, all just sounded like, what's the word for it? I can't even remember the word for it. Like just words that get thrown around. Now we're actually seeing what they actually mean when they say we're going to decolonize places. The next one is another Black Lives Matter organisation. This is Black Lives Matter UK saying, solidarity with those resisting Israeli war crimes and military occupation. We say free Palestine and support the practical solidarity of PAL action. I mean, again, like, terrible timing. This was, you know, right after the invasion of Israel had happened. But it does mean that some left-wing people are waking up to what, you know, Black Lives Matter meant, and waking up to all this sort of Marxism. So David Weissman, who's a former military guy in America, so 2 years ago he was saying, I will never stop saying Black Lives Matter, and I may even get a t-shirt myself. 2 years on, fuck them. Maybe the right was right about Black Lives Matter. Yeah, David. And guess what? We're right about everything. Absolutely right about everything. But we're seeing the change. But some of the replies, this is Kimberly Johnson replying to him, saying, David, oh my God, please stop with this. People on the right, who used to be on the right, seem to want to jump to the worst case scenario about BLM. Yeah, you keep believing, Kimberly. You keep clinging on to that dream. Oh my God, I mean, I thought when Patrice Cullors bought all those mansions, that might have been the thing that made it break. But no, even now, even with Black Lives Matter ideology being used to justify murdering civilians, they're still like, yeah, Black Lives Matter. It's absolutely mad. Like, the left, it sometimes feels like a death cult. And some people are waking up to, you know, what diversity, what multiculturalism actually means. So Bella Wallersteiner, a couple of weeks back, says, we have a Hindu Prime Minister, a Muslim Mayor of London, a Buddhist Home Secretary, and a Muslim First Minister of Scotland. Britain's multicultural society is remarkable, and we should celebrate it, Suella Braverman. 2 weeks later, I've left as I didn't feel safe. I tried speaking to a few protesters and making the point that it was totally inappropriate to hold a demonstration of this kind after a heinous terrorist attack. As you can imagine, I didn't get very far, and I advised people, leave the area, avoid the area. So, there's that multiculturalism you ordered. I'm not gloating, by the way, it's just, you know, people are waking up to this stuff. Also, what I thought, so the Football Association said they weren't going to light up the arch at Wembley like they did with Ukraine. They said they weren't going to light the Wembley arch in the colours of the Israeli flag because of fears of a backlash from some communities. Now, when they say some communities, obviously we know who they mean. They mean, you know, Muslim communities, people who are going to kick off and maybe try and burn Wembley to the ground because they've lit the Israeli flag up. But at the moment, you know, these communities that everybody has to tiptoe around, that the authorities are afraid of, that, you know, the police are afraid of offending. What's going to happen when they double in size, quadruple in size? I mean, like Elon Musk says, demographics is density. Sorry. Oh my God. Not density. Demographics is destiny. Leo Kearse is density. So yeah, demographics is destiny. And yeah, so what's going to happen if we're afraid of, you know, putting up a flag to just say sorry to people killed in a terrorist atrocity? Now, what's it going to be like in 20 years' time? I don't know. I hope people are waking up to what's happening. But not in Scotland. They're not in Scotland. They're generally in favour of it. Here's Maggie Chapman, who's a member of the Scottish Parliament. She says, what's happening? She's a Green Party member, by the way. She says, what's happening in Palestine is a consequence of apartheid, of illegal occupation, and of imperial aggression by the Israel state. Palestinian civilians have seen their homes destroyed, their water stolen, and their land appropriated illegally. Now, Maggie Chapman is actually from Zimbabwe, so she's got first-hand experience of decolonialism, and in Zimbabwe it wasn't a smooth process. It resulted in a lot of deaths, a lot of people being displaced off their land. Like, nobody cared because they're white, but a lot of them were killed as well. And then it didn't result in a utopia. The Boer farmers who were living there knew what they were doing. And the people who came in, because they were Mugabe's cronies, they were just sort of gifted these farms and this farmland to run, but they had no experience of farming, so they couldn't grow the crops. They'd just sell the tractors and whatever, and get sell the seed corn or whatever to get instant money. And then everyone starves. Zimbabwe goes from being the breadbasket of Africa to starving and dependent on handouts. So yeah, I wish Scottish politicians would just stick to transitioning kids. Here's a woman in Australia
I can't stop
talking
about
about
the
it.
way that colonisation is in its reckoning period across so much of West Africa and Central Africa. We're seeing coups and we're seeing uprisings. And, I'm not an expert on the politics of Israel and Palestine, but it is also deeply unsurprising to me seeing what's happening in Palestine. Because everyone is acting, like some people are acting confused, and the instinct here, given the complexity, is to see things in terms of this is horrific, what's happened to Israel. But when you all examined colonisation and decolonising, what did you actually think that would look like? Like, for real, it is.
So she's saying, you can see the glee in her face. It's mad. She's like, for a start, she says, I'm not an expert on Israel and Palestine. So it's nice of her to say that and then have all these deeply held opinions about why she's happy that civilians were massacred. But the sort of glee, because ideologically, yeah, they're decolonising. They don't care about what eggs get broken on the way to making the omelette. It's the whole sort of communist ideology. It's the pursuit of utopia, and anything that happens on the way just doesn't matter. And she knows that these women are getting raped and taken by Hamas and raped and stuff. But looking at her, I guess she's got the confidence of somebody who knows that they'll rape her last. So the next one is Jackson Hinkle, who's a pro sort of, he's a right wing but pro Russia commentator, and he's showing footage of Gaza saying if Russia had done this to Ukraine, there would be US troops on the ground in Kyiv within hours. And Russia did do that to Ukraine. It did it like completely flattened loads of cities like Mariupol. It's absolutely ridiculous to say, and committed horrific crimes, mass rapes, mass civilian murders in places like Busha. So yeah, this guy's talking absolute shite. It's just weird. It's weird how people on the right come out and lick Putin's balls because they think for some reason he's some sort of, he's a bastion of Christendom and traditional values. And he's the absolute opposite. But like, Russia's an incredibly Muslim country. It doesn't have, it's the same sort of cesspit of degeneracy as the West. It's not, it's not at all what they seem to think it is. And here's Hamas. So, there've been a lot of people complaining that Israel has cut off water to Gaza. Here's Hamas. Here's Hamas digging up the water pipes. They're literally digging up the water pipes and building rockets. So, I don't know, maybe they'd have more water if they didn't dig up the water pipes and turn them into rockets. I don't know. I'm not an expert, unlike that woman. Let's see some comments. Sarah says only 13 present-day countries have ever been colonized by Europeans. Afghanistan, Bhutan, China, Iran, Japan, Liberia, Mongolia, Nepal, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, South Korea, Thailand and Turkey, as well as North Yemen. I did not know that. Nick Merrily says, very recently in Australia, we had a group of people outside of the Sydney Opera House chanting, "Gas the Jews," and funnily enough, I've got that video right here. So here we go. This is people in Sydney in Australia. So that's probably enough of that. So they're chanting "Gas the Jews." What I don't understand is so Count Dankula, when he said "Gas the Jews" in a joke, and the joke was definitely a joke, and it wasn't glorifying and Nazism or anything like that. Count Dankula was literally, if anything, drawing attention to the fact that Hitler, is the ultimate evil, because it's the comparison with the sort of cuteness of the pug that made it funny. So it wouldn't work if he was saying Hitler was good. It wouldn't work as a joke. And he obviously wasn't saying that. So that's a criminal offence. He had to pay like an £800 fine for that. And how come these people? I know it's a different country, but this is happening across the Western world. They're allowed to just chant this stuff, and they mean it. That's not part of a joke. There's no little pugs down there. They're not trying to get little pugs to do salutes. That is legit. I do not understand that. Nick Merrilies says, who's in Australia, says that group of people do not want me near them. It's not just them, Nick. Hey, I'm joking. But yeah, Nick says, my response to this protest in Sydney is outrage. And yeah, quite right. It is outrageous, man. And yeah, I hope this is waking people up to the horrors of these ideologies that everybody's been tiptoeing around. But yeah, it's not just them. Back to Scotland, Celtic. I used to support Celtic. I had to support Celtic at school. They're one of the two Old Firm teams in Glasgow. The big Scottish teams. There's Rangers and there's Celtic. Celtic have been not just Palestinian flags, but like Hamas flags, all kinds of horrific stuff. And these were delivered to the Celtic club. So it's not just some fans bringing it along. It's like the club seems to be complicit. It's absolutely nuts. And I'll just finish on this because Hamas have got big plans. So Israel is only the first target, warns the Hamas commander Mahmoud al-Zahar. God, all these names sound so angry. I wonder if that might be the reason that there's so much violence and aggression in certain parts of Islam, because all this stuff, Mahmoud Zahar, even shouting Allah Akbar. It's the equivalent of Allah Akbar in English is like God is great, or oh God, and that just sounds like some sort of happy clappy person round a campfire with an acoustic guitar, or somebody's lost their car keys, like oh God. I don't know. So maybe somebody whose internet keeps dropping out. So yeah, basically Mahmoud al-Zahar, the commander of Hamas, says he wants to take over the entire planet. I mean, he's ambitious. He says there's an entire 510 million square kilometers of planet Earth, and it's going to come under a system where there's no injustice, no oppression, no Zionism, no treacherous Christianity, and no killings and crimes like those being committed against the Palestinians and against the Arabs in all the Arab countries in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and other countries. So yeah, that's what they've got planned for us. I don't know if it's going to work. They seem to be having a bit of trouble taking over Israel, but that's their plans. It does sound a lot like what wokists want to do. What Black Lives Matter want. Also, he mentions Lebanon. Lebanon used to be a Christian country, and then it gradually became less Christian, and now it is not very successful. I've just got a few Patreon comments to answer. It would be great if you could talk about the BBC's refusal to use the word terrorist to describe Hamas, citing impartiality. They don't want to take sides unless it's their coverage of the BLM riots. Sorry, largely peaceful protests. And that's true. BBC has refused to call Hamas terrorists. This is part of the sort of BBC style guide. What they do is they report on things and they say, well, these people call them terrorists. And they let people make up their own mind, apparently. But they say terrorism is a morally loaded term. But it's factual. It's factual. They're committing attacks on civilians designed to spread terror. The BBC even called the IRA terrorists in the past. I think it was in the context of a drama, but still, they've called the IRA terrorists. And the IRA, for all their faults, man, they had defined explicit, plausible political objectives. They weren't just, killing out of hate. So, Hamas are even worse than them. Nick says, and just as importantly, I think the anti-racist beans have been lost by the Royal Mail. However, it is plausible I need to send a cow for said beans. I cannot promise the cow to be anti-racist. It is likely to have qualities exceeding racism by the time it is delivered. Nick, I've got to apologise. I didn't send the magic beans. I've only sent about 3 packets of magic beans, and I need to get my finger out and actually do that. I promise I'll send for top tier people. You get a package of anti-racist magic beans. I've got them. They're right through there. I've got little envelopes. I'm going to get that sorted on tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll definitely do it. I will definitely do it. Stephen says, why is it so difficult to get things done in the UK? I don't know. I think it's because we're in a post-capitalist society. So there's no incentive for people to get things done. He says, why are there so many blue-haired women about? Is it a COVID symptom, or are they just staunch Tories? I think they're staunch Tories, or maybe big fans of Dot Cotton. He says, why do businesses offer shit service, and then when you complain they point to posters highlighting rules and verbal abuse? Steve, you had that man in a headlock. That is more than complaining to customer service. Paul says that the changing role of comedy in the culture war would be interesting to me, and yeah, I think it's gonna change, especially when Labour get back in. If Labour get back in, then yeah, I think comedy is, at the moment, comedy is kind of, even though comedians think that they're punching against some oppressive regime, they're not. They're actually part of the regime, this woke lefty regime. And even though we've ostensibly got a Tory government, number one, they're not very right wing. Number two, they're sort of hemmed in on all sides by this woke blob that won't let them enact anything that's remotely conservative. And when Liz Truss tried, she was immediately slung out the window. So I think when Labour get in and everything is leftist, then it's going to be much more obvious that sort of, I guess, people, comedians, countercultural comedians, are actually punching against the power and not shilling for the Tories. Anyway, thanks for joining this live stream. Sorry for the technical screw-ups. I only lost 3 of you during the whole thing, even though we dropped out for like 12 minutes in the middle. I'm going to do another one of these. I'm going to make it tighter and funnier, and there's going to be, hopefully, nicer things happening in the world, so it's not just such a depressing dirge of horrific news. And I'm going to get a camera set up, and it's all going to be great. We're going to be living in a utopia. I believe in it, in my heart. But yeah, I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you avoid the global day jihad. And yeah, speak to you soon. Bye. Bye. Love you lots. And I'll get those beans to you, Nick. Bye. Bye.